Good morning, everyone. My name is Mihai Nagy. It's a great pleasure to me to introduce my guest today, Shay McConnon. Shay is the managing director and founder of People First International Training and Consulting Group. He specializes on creating collaborative relationship in a workplace. He's also a practitioner spending last 20 years working with organizations on leadership and cultural issues, and he's also the author of 18 books on personal development, many of which have been translated into several languages. And more importantly, Shay is the creator of an Even Better Place to Work program, which is the world's first online self-service culture-enhancing program, employee engagement program, which is currently being used by organizations as TNT, BA System, AstraZeneca. Shay McConnon, welcome. Shay McConnon, welcome. Good to have you here.
Good morning, Mihai.
Now, today, Shay, we shall be talking about, that's your specialty, developing and engaging culture via rewarding relationship. And you have been talking and teaching about workforce dynamics and building winning teams and building winning relationships for the last 30 years or so. Why is it so difficult, do you think, to get working relationship right?
There's many answers to this question, many parts to it. However, one of the reasons, obviously, is that we're different as people. We have different values, beliefs, views on the world. However, the trap a lot of us fall into, which gets us into trouble in our relationships, is what I call the right-wrong trap, the right-wrong thinking. I'm convinced my view is right and the other person is wrong. Of course, they're obviously thinking the same thing. And very often, it's not about what is right or wrong, but really what is important to the individuals. And if we get into the argument mode, yes, but, then I've probably fallen into that I am right and you are wrong, which of course only forces a reaction in the other person of, no, let me prove to you I'm right and you're wrong. And now we waste so much time and there's a high emotional cost. I mean, do we hear very often, I disagree with you, but I might be wrong? And even that little phrase could just change quite the dynamic. The other reason is what I call the hot chili trap. You see, I love hot chili, doesn't everybody? No, not everybody wants to be treated the way you do. They are very, very different. And very often we don't realize this. So for some people, being appreciated is massively important. They just need to be thanked. For others, being thanked doesn't do anything for them. They need more challenges. And for others still, if you thank them, they're going to feel patronized. So we can very easily dysfunction our colleagues without realizing it, and that's the tragedy. The tragedy is I won't even be aware of it. I'll be trying to add value in the relationship, and in actual fact, I'll be eroding it, and I won't realize it. We don't come with an instruction book, so therefore, I have to take ownership for letting my colleagues know how I need to be treated. And not only that, I think the implications for organization in this, Mihai, is that we need to be checking out on a regular basis if our relationships are okay. It's like you put your car in for a service. If you don't put your car in for a service, it's going to splutter to a stop and break down somewhere. The same with relationships. If we don't service them, if we don't check out how are things going, am I getting it right for you, expect a relationship breakdown at some stage.
The most important message probably what you said is that you have to shift the focus of discussion from my point of view to put it on a person's point of view. So the old saying of treat people the way you want to be treated is not really true.
Absolutely. People treat people as they need to be treated. Absolutely.
How do you do that? I mean, it's easier to said than done, isn't it?
Well, the reason why it's very difficult is you want to be treated like that? The thought would just never enter my head. Like, if I'm one of these people who are motivated by challenges, that would be my style. I will try and motivate my people by giving them more challenges, not realizing some people will just feel dumped on. It's anything but motivating because they are so dramatically different. The problem with empathy, it's not getting into somebody else's shoes, it's getting out of my own. It is so difficult getting into other people's world. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult.
Employee engagement ranks very high upon the HR leader's agenda. and employee engagement is all about getting it right to the individual in the organization. What are the typical problems and challenges do you consider in regards to today's employee engagement initiatives?
People usually don't take care of a rented car. It's not mine. And the same with organizations. Uninvolved staff are less likely to be committed. A commitment comes from engagement. Compliance comes from being told. It's massively important to an organization's success. In terms of an engagement culture, I think one of the key areas is this whole thing of feeding back. And that's how we engage, linking it in with your first question about our differences and checking out whether in actual fact the need is being met, whether we're getting it right for each other. And I think there are issues here, particularly in terms of the skills of giving and receiving feedback. People are just not skilled in giving the feedback. We give feedback in the form of criticism. Oh, you are arrogant. You should be more sensitive. And then we receive feedback by getting defensive very often, rather than connecting with other people's needs. And the secret of giving and receiving feedback is never criticize the person or what they've done. Talk about what your needs are, what their needs are, and then problem solve on these needs. The tragedy of all of this is the skills are not difficult. They are not difficult. The skills are relatively easy. The difficulty was the default setting. Somebody accuses me of something, and I just react by getting defensive, rather than recognizing a criticism is nothing more than a clumsy way of expressing an unmet need and connecting with it. And the other thing in terms of getting the culture right is, I think this is so important. We just can't leave it to individuals. It'll be hit and miss. We need to be proactive, and it needs to be systemized in the business. So rather than waiting for the slam door, the raised voices, the blazing row, that's too late. What we need to be doing is putting stuff in place so that we invite feedback. We are proactive. And again, it's nothing more than checking whether your car has got fuel in your drive on a Sunday, so you avoid the problem of the car breaking down, running out of fuel on the motorway. And again, as part of the culture, we need to make it safe for people to be open and honest. That's really, really, really important. Now, one of the ways that happens is when people actually welcome the feedback and they take it seriously. They problem solve on it. It's not about appeasing other people, though, giving them what they've asked for just because they've asked for it. And the other thing in terms of creating this culture, it's an engagement culture. It has to happen at every level, from the leadership team, managers, within teams, across teams. So this proactive culture, it's got to be at every level. It's just how we do business around here. We don't even think about it anymore. It's part of our thinking, our mindset, our behaviors.
People actually welcome feedback. I mean, I've been working with several organizations. I never came across with any company where, let's say, a division director goes to one of his or her subordinates and say that, come in my office at 5 o'clock today, I'd like to give you some feedback. And I never actually came across when the actual worker was sort of pumped up and excited during the whole day that, fantastic, I'm getting a feedback this afternoon. So it's rather, on the other hand, it's rather as a kind of a negative. What did I do wrong that my boss wants to give me a feedback? So
exactly.
How do you achieve that actually employees welcome feedback and they really consider it as a kind of a development?
And this is critical. That's a massively important question. It's got to be a good experience or they will not want to continue with it. The basic principle, it has to be the self-interest principle. If we're wanting people to be engaged and give and receive feedback, they have got to benefit from that. It has to be a good experience or they'll not want to go and deal with it again. I'm going to tell you the story. As you know, I've been working in organizations for years on leadership and culture issues, and feedback is an area I've specialized in. And one of the things I would say is, listen, if you're being dysfunctioned, if somebody is mistreating you as you see it, well, if you're moaning behind their backs and not going to them and talking to them and giving them the feedback, you're partly responsible for being treated in this way. And I would skill them in how to give and receive feedback. And then I had one lady come up to me and said, Shay, are you telling me I got to go and give feedback to my boss? I said, well, if he's dysfunctioning you, yeah. She said, no way. She said, I can never do that. So, and that is the issue. A person doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel it would be welcome, does not feel it would be in their interest to give the feedback. Anyway, I had a chat with the team leader quietly, and the way we got around this, because he was a good guy, is he invited the feedback. Now, this made it a bit easier or safer for her to have the conversation with him. So they had the conversation. He was also pretty skilled in how he handled the situation and welcomed the feedback and acted out of the feedback. Now, that's a transformation moment. Talking the theory does not necessarily mean there's going to be any change to the behaviors. So it's these transformation moments which are the most important thing, because they are the ones that bring about this change.
Feedback is very, very important in an organization, but the question is feedback being valued by top management effectively enough? They value finance skills, marketing skills, sales skills, but when it comes to sort of soft skills, which are actually more often than not seems like the harder skills, is it valued enough? And if it's not, what can I do to influence my top leaders to embrace the feedback culture?
Okay, I make a distinction between leading the business and leading the people in the business. And the people who are usually, their gift is in leading the business, very often their gift is not in getting the best out of their people. Now, feedback is absolutely critical to minimizing the dysfunction in relationships in organizations. The greatest source of inefficiency for most businesses is in working relationships. The way you prevent all your people problems and this massive cost to the business is the proactive feedback. You don't wait for it to happen. You invite the feedback, have the conversation to make sure the need is met, is addressed, and that we move forward without the blazing row, the slam door, the resignation, or even the strike. And the root of that is this proactive feedback. Now, people at the top end of an organization, very often they are the people whose gift set is in leading the business. They're very busy, very focused on the marketplace, on growing the business. And sometimes their people can get neglected. There's several issues here. Very often they come from this go-getter, if you like, value mindset. And they'll be thinking, if there is an issue, they'll tell me, because that's how they operate. If somebody's dysfunctioning, then you'll know about it because they'll tell you, and they'll tell you to your face, and in a very direct way. So that's the rule in their world, and that's the rule they're assuming operates in other people's worlds. So they'll interpret silence as approval. Nobody's saying anything to me, must be okay. Let's keep moving. So they probably won't think of inviting feedback. They will probably interpret the silence as, hey, things are going okay. The other issue is their staff will attend the courses that I've attended. I've given them the skills of feedback, and then they're now in this issue. I don't feel safe to talk to my boss. I don't feel comfortable. It won't be a good experience because they are very, very focused on results and not necessarily on people. So you have this dilemma, absolutely. And it's not that those people will not value the feedback. They will, but very often they don't think of giving the time to do it. And it becomes absolutely critical. I can't emphasize this enough. With any culture program, any engagement program, anything that we're talking about here, the leadership team, their behaviors, their attitude is critical to whether whatever is started in that business is going to be sustained. It's absolutely critical.
That connects well to your 7 Keys for Developing Leadership book, which was also actually the foundation of the Even Better Place to Work program. Could you just give us an insight on what are the 7 keys in developing leadership? What are the key indicators that those leadership criteria impact, and why are those indicators so critical?
Now, an Even Better Place to Work, it's a staff engagement program which gets individuals taking ownership for improving the quality of their work lives. The 7 indicators for quality of work life, and these have emerged from my work within organizations. It's a place where people feel valued. Now, why is feeling valued or high self-esteem so important? Well, all the research will tell us there's a correlationship between self-esteem, self-worth, and performance. It's the fuel for performance. The high esteem environment is the high-performing environment. It's a place where people feel good. It's a place where people can be open. They can discuss the undiscussable. They can talk to people rather than about them. They are highly motivated. Now, there's a link between these indicators. People who feel valued are more likely to be open. People who feel valued and open are more likely to be highly motivated. So it's like the old domino effect. Each of these things really impact on the other. People who feel motivated will manage their differences. That's another indicator. They engage in feedback as is necessary. They take ownership for their needs, and there's minimal dysfunctional conflict. So just imagine a team, a business, an organization where people did feel valued. They were open with each other. They fed back as required. They were highly motivated. They managed their differences effectively. They took ownership for their issues with minimal dysfunctional conflict. What difference would this make to the quality of work life for people and to the impact of leadership? You see, if leadership is working, and I mean leading the people now rather than leading the business, if leadership is working, then people will feel valued. They will be highly motivated. They will be managing their differences. They will be engaging in feedback. So while the program is about, and unashamedly about, indirectly it's all about leadership. It's about resourcing people so they do this themselves. So the question constantly asked is, what am I going to do, not what is management going to do? And all of this is easy. We come up with the why and what we should be doing, but very few people come up with the how-to. Well, yeah, but how can I do all of that? And this is a real how-to program. So it actually resources people. It's practical, it's friendly.
Shay, let me ask you, many of the HR professionals, in fact, any business people I've spoken with, they tell me that a healthy conflict in a workplace is good and it's something which is unavoidable. What's your view on that?
Conflict is only constructive if, as a result, there's a greater understanding of each other or a greater willingness to meet each other's needs. Outside of that, it is destructive. When I ask people say, yeah, but conflict's constructive. And then I'll say, well, how many of your conflicts in the last 12 months have been constructive? And they'll say, Now, there is a view out there which is, hang on, differences of opinion. Yeah, we need to get the differences of opinion. We need openness. We need people being challenged. We need the richness that differences bring, of course. But do we need conflict? No. Conflict basically is an unmet need. And most conflict we're talking about is interpersonal conflict. You're the one that's stopping my need being met. So I'm in conflict with you. But actually, conflict is a much wider concept than that. It's an unmet need of any kind. Therefore, I am in conflict. Demotivated people are people in conflict with the job. The job does not meet their needs. Now, I will talk about having the conflict-free organization. And by that, I mean free from interpersonal conflict, meaning I won't be in conflict with you. My colleagues, my boss, whoever it is, hey, no, they're on my side. They're connected. They understand my needs. I sense a willingness from them to meet my needs if it were possible. It's not always going to be possible. Of course it isn't. And that, to me, is the most effective way to run a business. That's when a business is at its most efficient. Because if we do accept the greatest source of inefficiency is in working relationships, well then, let's get that inefficiency out. And this is how we get it out.
But then it also starts with people being comfortable enough to come forward and take ownership for their own so-called disengagement issues. Could you explain, you have a view called a joint responsibility when it comes to engagement, when it comes to leadership. What do you mean by joint responsibility?
I apply this not just to leadership, but to all relationships. Relationships and leadership is complex. It's just not fair to expect one person to be getting it right for everybody else. As I said, we don't have an instruction book. No instruction book came with me when I was born. This is how you get the best out of Shay. And what I'm really saying is the only sensible, realistic way out of this is for individuals to take ownership for letting their colleagues know how they need to be treated. It's got to be a partnership. People have got to work together on this one. Talk to me, not about me. Tell me about your needs, and let's work at how they can be met without compromising the business of other people. Now, to me, this is real engagement, and this goes way beyond than just let's consult our staff, et cetera, and have some meetings. This is really finding out, hey, what are your needs? People come to work to have their needs met, and if the needs are not met, they're going to become disaffected. They're going to become disengaged. They're going to be demotivated, low morale, all the things that tell you leadership is not working. Leadership is about connecting with people's needs, not necessarily meeting them or appeasing them, but connecting them. And that creates this massive loyalty to people. We constantly say leaders need to bring out the best in their people, and they need to create the atmosphere whereby people will go the extra mile for them. Absolutely, but why stop with leaders? Surely that's a dynamic we want with every individual in the team to everybody else. That will happen when people feel, wow, you understand me, you understand my needs, and I sense a willingness from you to meet my needs if that were possible. If you're really looking for an easy measure on the quality of any relationship, it's two questions I would suggest to you. Number one, how much do you feel I understand you? Number two, how much do you sense a willingness from me to meet your needs? Now, that's what you want your customers thinking of you, scoring those high. Yeah, you understand us. Yeah, you are willing to meet our needs. That, to me, is what customer service is all about. That, to me, is what a good relationship is all about. That, to me, was what good leadership is about. That is what it's got to be, this joint thing with every single individual within my team. And I see a massive link there between engagement, the feedback. It's a lovely, simple model which will make a massive difference to the quality of work life for individuals, but also to people's bottom line.
Fantastic. Shay, last but not least, let me ask you, probably you answered the question in the last 20 minutes, but what excites you professionally with working with organizations?
I suppose it's moments like this, whereby there's some recognition that what you're doing is contributing something. And it has to be that, contributing something, moving the whole people debate forward. What saddens me is we're still talking today about the same people issues we did 30 or 40 years ago. And we're more or less doing the same sorts of thing. And we need a different approach. So I get excited when I can work with people in organizations who are open to new approaches, who want to be creative. And then probably the greatest moment is when you've created something and then you see people engage with it because they want to. In other words, they benefit from it. I think that's the bit that brings the biggest smile to my face.
Shay McConnon.
And chatting to you, of course.
Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Delighted. Thank you.